So hi, here's Florian with a new podcast guest, so introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Magda Zadara. I work as a product manager at Fernarzt, which is a telemedical company. And we are part of a company builder called Heartbeat Labs. And myself, I have a background in product design mostly, and I came from the design space and moved into product management about 1.5 years ago.
How this transition happened?
Yeah, so I think it really started back when I picked design as a direction to go into. I studied quite traditional product design, so things like designing furniture or electronics or consumer products. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was 18. I studied a lot of different subjects at school and kind of liked many of them. And I felt like product design was somehow at the intersection of a lot of different topics. And I really wanted to go in a direction that lets you kind of shape the world around you. And it seemed to me at the time that product design was the way to go. And now looking back at it, I think that really this was the start of the road that at the end ended up in product management rather than UX design, for example. So I after finishing my studies, I realized that maybe traditional product design is not necessarily what excites me the most, and that technology is where it's happening and where it's at right now. So I joined a software development agency back in Poland, where I come from, and I got very deeply involved in the processes there and in the way that we organize our work. And it was a very good place to learn about the intricacies of how you develop a product, and not necessarily a space where you were confined to your role as a designer. So there I was officially a UI designer, but it was a very collaborative space, and we had a lot of room to shape our roles in whichever way we thought was best for the product at the end. And then I wanted to come to Berlin, and I joined a company here called BCG Digital Ventures, which is a subsidiary of the Boston Consulting Group, which is a big management consultancy, and there the focus is kind of on the holistic building of a company. And so what they do is they build startups for corporates. And I got exposed to a whole nother level of interdisciplinary collaboration and of kind of this whole entire process of building not just a product but a company, really. And I think through all of these transitions, I realized that my strength and why I came to product design in the first place was not the craft, which I admire and I love and I honed for a long time, but it was not the reason why I was there. The reason was because I like to connect the dots. I like to do problem solving, and my strengths are really in multitasking rather than doing a task for a long time and doing it very well to the last detail. So while at BCG Digital Ventures, I realized that I got interested in moving closer to product management rather than design, and really started learning about it much more, and realized that just my skill set is much more suited to product management rather than design. But I still am, by background, by training, quite rigorous training, a designer, which I think also is a huge benefit for my work as a product manager right now. And so I think it's just, as it is often in life, looking back, it makes a lot of sense as a journey. I think while I was on the journey, it didn't necessarily seem that clear. Yeah.
So would you say you're still bringing design ideas in your product manager job, or you try really just to bring people together and let them do the stuff and just manage it more?
Yeah, I definitely bring human-centered design processes into my work. I studied in an environment which was very kind of in the IDEO and D-School spirit, and where everything was about the user and it was heavily centered on the process of developing a product rather than the execution of it. And so that really stayed with me, and that was for me always design. And that I for sure still bring to the table while being a product manager. Obviously, while meandering through different roles and companies, I also developed a great admiration and passion for software development and delivery. While I don't code myself, and I don't, other than some hobby projects, I'm not an engineer, but through working with engineers for a long time, I also developed a big passion for the processes that allow software to be great and for, what they call software craftsmanship. So I definitely have passions and strengths outside of design that I bring to product management. But I don't think I will ever shake my background and my training. And I don't want to, because I think it's very beneficial to being a product manager.
Yeah, cool. I remember you told me that at the agency in Poland, that it was quite interesting culture, because on the one side you were quite cross-functional, and also the management is pretty much involved in doing stuff. So what were the benefits and probably also the downsides of that, in this culture?
Yeah, it was a very, very interesting company. We worked in a team of developers and designers, mostly when I was there. And it was a very experts-driven culture and a very domain-driven culture. So this focus on excellence and on software craftsmanship was very much at the forefront, rather than there being a focus on processes or business management in a way. And I think that works really, really well when you are brought in as a team of experts to help clients build something in a domain that they know very well. So we would support clients like Dolby or like Philips, who would be thinking about launching maybe a mobile app, so we were focused on mobile apps. But they weren't really sure how to start that team, or they weren't really yet that invested in that particular product. And so we would help them build up the first MVP, so to speak, of this app, or even accompanied it for a longer time. But we were really brought in as a technical expert. And I think in that context, it works really, really well. The reason why I ended up moving away from that role and from that company was because I yearned for something that was more holistic in a way. So I felt like the success of our project was oftentimes dependent on the quality of our counterpart on the client side.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know more about the business processes and the organizational processes that come before you decide that you need a mobile app, or before you decide that you need that particular product. So really, I wanted to just kind of expand my horizons. I wanted to learn more, and so that's why I moved away from it. And I guess you could say that that's a sort of limitation of that model. At the same time, it taught me a lot about attention to detail and a lot about expecting a certain level and standard of code and of design and of just delivery excellence that I very much carry with me till this day. And that was very, very helpful as an early experience in my career, for sure.
It's a good point, because it makes sense if you say you're really good craftsmanship in design and development. Doesn't mean that what you produce at the end brings value to the people who use it, because if you don't control the business side, you completely rely on them that they make good decisions. We're still able then to develop it in an agile style, which mean that you would do consistent user tests with your customers?
Absolutely. We very much advocated for that, and we tried to get as much research and testing in as possible. I worked on one particular app there for an organization called Best Buddies. They're an NGO from the US, and they focus on integrating people with intellectual disabilities into communities. And there we even kind of flew out and went to a conference that the organization was hosting to really meet with their members and to meet with the community and to really find out what it was that they were that they needed and that was their pain point. And that was great because it allowed us to really look at this product and say, okay, we think this is what you need. This was mostly because the client who was ordering this was open-minded and aware enough to see that they needed that. So I think it all depended on the setup. But we had we were very much advocating for it, and we were, I think, if I remember correctly, most of us were industrial designers by training.
Okay.
And I think that also shaped the way that we approached UX design, because in industrial design, you cannot validate after you've produced it.
Yeah.
So prototyping and testing beforehand is really part of the job, and it's inevitable. In software design, you can argue for it, and you can you can see the benefits, etc. But it's not really as heavily weighing on your process as when you produce 500,000 pieces of a plug, and that has to work, or whatever. So I think that it's in all of our minds, it was very clear that this was the only way to go, and so we as a design team always advocated for it and had the support of our management. But of course, it was always dependent on the client.
On the client, yeah. So you're working right now in the medicine sector. Mm-hmm. So do you want to explain to the listeners what Fernarzt what Fernarzt is?
Absolutely. So Fernarzt is in a broad sense, a telemedical platform. And what we do is we allow patients who know their health well and who know their symptoms and their issues well to get a prescription and medication online. So a standard case for that would be a chronic disease that you have. Maybe you have asthma or even acne. And for that, you need a prescription. So if you want to do it the kind of classic way, you have to go see your doctor every 3 months. You have to, go through their office. You have to sit in the waiting room. You have to be exposed to potentially to other sick people, etc. You have to go through the whole spiel in order to, at the end, see the doctor for 30 seconds, just check in whether you still have, whether your symptoms are still the same, and then get a prescription, go to the pharmacy, etc., etc. So this is the main pain point that we're solving for at the moment, which is that we allow patients to go through a questionnaire-based process where they describe to us their symptoms in a very structured and organized manner, and then very much like they would to a doctor. And then one of our partner doctors reviews that questionnaire, decides whether it's appropriate in that case to give a prescription or not, and then writes a prescription and sends it to our partner pharmacy, and our partner pharmacy sends the medication to the patient. So you don't actually have to leave your house if you don't want to.
Yeah, the medicine sector is really regulated, I'm guessing. Mm-hmm. They're really regulated.
Oh, yeah.
So how you handle that? So you just find a niche where you say there's completely covered, or how did you approach this problem?
Yeah, it's a big challenge in the industry right now. At the same time, at this very moment, regulation is changing very, very fast in Germany, and this is also why I think we're seeing a lot of e-health companies popping up. But from our perspective, it was always about finding a very specific use case or a very small niche, as you say, and starting there and really understanding what is the pain point of the patient right now. Is there a safe and sound way to solve it in the current landscape And then started with a very small MVP almost 2 years ago, or even longer than that, and then was validated as a kind of good base to build on. And of course, we want to expand our services, and we want to, in the end, serve more than just repeat prescriptions and become really the go-to place. But we knew that, especially in the medical sector, and actually, I would advocate in any product that you're starting to start with a very specific use case. But in this case, especially, it was important to find something small that you could then build on, and then that you could use to understand the landscape and the regulation through.
Yeah, and then how you keep track for the changing of the regulation. So you just regularly have checked the official German government side for publishing of new laws, or how do you handle this issue?
Yeah, so we are quite lucky or privileged as a startup to be part of a company builder, which is dedicated for healthcare. So Heartbeat Labs provides us with a lot of infrastructure, so to say, and connection into the health industry. And there's a legal counsel there who is kind of always reviewing all of the legal situations and informing the team about changes that might be relevant to one of the ventures, or that might just generally be relevant to the development of the group. So we have a lot of kind of dedicated resources for the healthcare space. I think that if you are a lone startup in the wild, so to say, or if you work in a more generalist agency, I imagine it to be a lot more difficult than when you have a whole group that's just entirely focused on the health sector.
Yeah, definitely. So, what would you say are your biggest challenges today?
For a startup in the medical sector?
Yeah, and for you, more specific, like for Fernarzt itself.
Right. I think the complex regulation for sure is one of the big challenges. It's quite obvious, but it's also the truth. It's why it's still quite a high barrier to entry for startups in the medical sector. And especially things like, in German, Kennziffern, so the how would you say? It's like the way that you structure billing and it's how money kind of flows through the insurance system. It's incredibly complex, and even doctors sometimes struggle to understand, especially things that are outside of their area. So that's one point, and the other point is still that the access to telemedical services is kind of limited because they are only kind of minimally refundable, right? Yeah. So I think that the big thing that we are advocating for, that we are waiting for, that we are kind of pushing for in a way, or would be very excited to see, is a better integration of digital services into especially the public insurance, the statutory insurances in Germany, right? Because this is really what gives everybody access, because as long as you have to pay for services yourself or be privately insured to use them and have them refunded, of course, it's still not a very democratized offering, right? So I think this is something that we would be very excited to see. And also from a product perspective, of course, if you want your product to be available to as many people as possible. And this is really also where the strength of telemedicine is, right? It's not in big cities, it's not in wealthy areas, it's in providing access to people who would otherwise maybe not have access, or who are losing it due to doctors moving away or practices closing, etc. So this is really where the main benefits of telemedicine lie, and in order to be able to use them and to be able to provide them fully, the system still needs to change a bit, but I think that it's happening, and there's a very passionate minister who obviously is this is at the forefront of his agenda. So we are quite confident that this is going to change in the coming years. And and then we'll see how it develops. I mean, also the med tech sector is a very collaborative space, and everyone's quite keen to exchange ideas and to work with each other, because we all know that it's a challenging environment, right? So this is actually quite nice in a way. I know I was meant to talk about challenges, but this is actually an anti-challenge. It's nice to have this boost that there's quite a community pushing, everyone kind of pushing for the same thing.
Yeah. I'm guessing the challenge still stays the same. You have just some companions with you, which help you to handle that.
Yeah.
So where you say like one of the biggest limitations is the health insurance system itself. So you find a way around to just go for private insurances or for just certain health insurance providers, or how did you handle that so far?
So far, we are a service for self-paying customers.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the English word. So you have to pay out of pocket basically for our services. And we are currently looking into how that could develop in the future, but there's nothing right now which we can announce. I think we see a lot of movement both in the private health insurances and the statutory health insurances. They are both have projects in the works which are suggesting that they are very excited about digitalization, right? So I think that hopefully it could be all of them, but there's nothing right now which we have available for our patients. So we don't really have a solution for that right now. That's what I'm saying. So probably then you hope for the next 5 years, or in the next 5 years, that like this whole integration of the different insurances, that they open up more and like give easier access to the systems probably. Absolutely. Yeah, this is definitely something that we see in the next 5 years, and I think that this is also where the push is going. Even if you look at the doctors' associations in Germany, who are, as any societal group, some of them are skeptical, others are enthusiastic about digitalization. And we are also, as a company, we believe that doctors will always be the driving force behind healthcare, and we by no means want to replace doctors. But anyways, what I was getting at is the Doctors Association allowed for telemedicine over a year ago in Germany to treat patients for the first time. So previously you could only treat patients remotely that you had seen before as a doctor. And so you can see that they are also moving in this direction. So I think all of the players are showing that it's going from our perspective, right direction, in the direction of broader access. But how this will play out in detail, we shall see.
Yeah, good point. What would you say a young person need to do to become a product manager?
This is a very difficult question, because I think there's right now no established route into product management. And I don't even know whether it's advisable or a good idea to start as a product manager. Most people I know who are product managers started in different roles and then became product managers later, because you have to kind of learn this product development process in a way before you can coordinate it, right? So in my case, I started as a designer. I know product managers who used to be engineers or business owners, product owners, but always kind of had one of the roles or one of the perspectives, and then familiarized themselves with the system, and then kind of became this binding function of a product manager. I think that if you for some reason at 18 somehow know about product management and know that you want to do it, I don't really know. I think the best way, from my perspective or my opinion, is that the best way is to go through one of these three functions. So either through being a business analyst or a business analyst, or a software engineer, or a designer.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And just learn the basics and then go from there.
So in the tech world, there are a lot of male persons present, more than female persons. Would you say this affected your career?
Such a difficult question, because I think that it's a super, super complex issue. And I think that it obviously, or from my perspective and from my reading and my experiences and my conversations, there is no area in my life which was not affected by my gender. And that is the reality. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a bad reality or sad reality. It's just that we get socialized in a way by our parents, by our schools, by everything, according to certain expectations that people have of your gender. And I think that this for sure affected my career in a way, but also just any part of my life. But I don't know what would have been different. I don't know how to imagine what would have been different if I was a guy. But I certainly think that being brought up as a girl, certain aspects of your personality that are nurturing and caring and kind of a certain type of, what I'm getting at as, I think product managers have a job that requires a lot of kind of servant leadership. I don't know if you know that concept, which is the idea that you can actually only effectively lead a team if you're kind of a servant to them, or if you're serving their needs rather than a leadership by strong opinion or by example. And I think that if you get brought up as a girl, then many aspects of your personality that are in that direction of nurturing and care and support get actually strengthened and encouraged more than if you were a boy. And that of course depends also on your family. So on what your parents do, whether your dad is actually your primary, whatever, the social structures that you grew up in. But I still think that actually from where I'm standing, it looks like because I was brought up as a girl, I might even have some certain qualities that give me more strength and more patience and more empathy in my daily job as a product manager than maybe I would have if I was a guy. I don't know if that answers your question.
That's a really interesting answer.
But it's what came to my mind, and I was also having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and he, a guy, seemed to also have spotted that there is something about female product managers that makes them anecdotally, obviously we don't have research on this, but that makes them a bit different than male product managers.
Yeah, like everyone has their strength. That's
exactly.
Good. And to play your strength is always the best. Cool. Yeah. And for learning and educating yourself, what you like to do. What's your favorite book, for example? Favorite books.
So these are really two questions, right? I like to read, and I definitely take inspiration and knowledge from books. I recently rediscovered a book that I read a long time ago as part of my education called Liquid Modernity. It's a book by a philosopher called Zygmunt Bauman. He's a quite well-known postmodernist philosopher, and it's just a very thoughtful and interesting look on how society changed through the ages of, like, from industrial age to information age. Yeah. And that really, I think, as a person working in tech, it's sometimes I find it important to take a step back and to read things that are maybe not necessarily very tactical, but are more removed and look at the structure as a whole. And I found so especially Liquid Modernity, I found very interesting and thought-provoking when you look at the software economy and the industry that we work in. But there are many books like this, like Future Ethics or even more geeky books like geeky is the wrong word, but Super Intelligent by Nick Bostrom. So there's, is it Nick Bostrom? I hope it is.
Yeah.
So just basically trying to read not necessarily how-to books or handbooks, but trying to read books that are more maybe a deeper look into what it actually is that we're working on and what it is that we're building. And also I love how to, but to be a machine, which is a book about transhumanists, which is just kind of a crazy look on people who want to upload themselves to the cloud or become cyborgs, etc. So I like to read these kinds of books more than I like to read handbooks. However, I do have a handbook recommendation, which there's a book called Product Management in Practice, which is really good about product management. Anyways, but that's the books. And then there's how I like to learn, and I think that the reality of how I learn is through interfacing with people. So I am quite a fan of the tech community. I think the tech community is actually a beautiful thing that is quite unique to this industry, and the fact that people share knowledge for free, the fact that companies give out kind of their secrets for free. My brother is a theater director, and he was just shocked when I told him that Facebook engineers go out on a stage and kind of present what they're working on. He was like, "Oh, I wish that theater people would do that." Anyways, but so I this is how I ended up here, because we met at a meetup, and I think this is a great way to learn. And I also have try to keep close ties to people who I used to work with, who were either mentors of sorts or inspired me, or were just people I admired in their work, which is close to product management, and then you can just ask them for advice, and actually this can be much more situational than just going to a meetup or reading a book, because product management is just so unique to every product and every team and every company that you work in, that I find it very hard sometimes to take advice off the shelf and apply it to your own situation.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And the last question.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell her?
To chill. And that would have been impossible, so I would empathize with that. I think I was very determined to know what I wanted to do, to have a plan, and for that plan to be right. And actually, after my first trimester at university, I knew that design, the craft of design, is not what I should do, and that is wrong for me. But I thought it was too late to change. I was 19 at the time. And it's amazing to me that I thought that it was too late. It's just amazing. And I was very convinced that it would be a total failure, a catastrophic failure, if I changed what I was studying, that it would somehow be very embarrassing. So I think, and this is actually the advice that I give to, I have a lot of nieces and nephews and cousins, and somehow they're all turning 18. And the advice that I gave them, all of them, was to take their time and figure out what they really wanted to do, and maybe do some internships before you pick a study course. Don't go to university at all, but my aunts and uncles hate me for that, but for saying that. But I think that you just give yourself time to figure out what you're good at, and then if you don't like it, do something else.
It's never too late to change.
No, absolutely.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you next time, guys.